Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to What's Happening. My name is Chloe Cooley, and we have a great episode ahead of us today. So here with me, I have Kaleb Littlejohn. Kaleb, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
My name's Kaleb Littlejohn. I'm the director here at Jacksonville State University for the Center for Best Practices in Law Enforcement.
So that is very interesting, and that's actually how I met you. I came on a tour of that facility there, and I was like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever, because I didn't even know it existed, to be honest. So I think that's super cool. So can you tell everybody, like, where you're from, where you went to school, all that fun stuff?
Yeah, so I'm from this area. I'm from Cherokee County in Spring Garden, Alabama, which is right outside of Piedmont, so not too far down the road. I graduated from JSU in 2010 and then came to JSU, got my undergrad degree here in criminal justice, and then a little bit later went back and got my master's degree here. And once I got my master's degree, I just never left. So,
yeah, that's fair, and that's the plan some people take, I guess. So did you always think that when you were a kid that criminal justice was going to be your plan?
No, I always was interested in criminal justice, and that goes back to really my dad loving cop shows and growing up and watching everything from Magnum PI to CSI. When I remember when CSI first came out, and all that, all those good shows. But I really came into JSU wanting to be something in the medical field. I was interested in an orthopedic doctor. I was interested in physical therapy. Actually, as an undergrad, worked here as a student athletic trainer in the sports medicine program. And it was there that I decided that maybe that's not what I wanted to do. I loved the job and I loved doing it, but I saw the amount of hours that the athletic trainers put in. I was meeting orthopedic surgeon fellows that were in their 40s and they still had 2 or 3 years left of school, and I was like, I don't know if this is what I'm really that passionate about, to commit that long of a time. So I decided then to make the switch. I was like, well, I was always kind of interested in criminal justice, so I made the switch in my major probably my sophomore year, almost my junior year. Decided to make that change in majors and never looked back. My dad was excited. I think it broke my mother's heart a little bit because she's an RN, but it was the right move for me by far.
Yeah, so it's good that you don't question the decision that you made. I mean, I definitely, just from knowing you, feel like you're in the right field, the right decision that you made. So was it difficult doing your graduate education? Like, was it kind of just undergrad ramped up, or was it a lot? Was it like completely different?
So it was difficult to kind of talk about how that happened. I was working as a deputy sheriff at Cleveland County Sheriff's Office while getting my undergrad or my master's degree. So the scheduling of time was difficult. But we have great professors here. A lot of writing. The master's program is a lot of writing. But I think it's such an important thing because, I tell kids all the time that are interested in going in law enforcement or, even just criminal justice in general, whether it's, a lawyer or anything like that, you have to be able to write. If you can't write in this profession, you're going to struggle because you have to be able to articulate essentially what you're trying to do, or what happened. And, those writing statements from you are the first thing that everybody sees, whether it's the DA, the defense, judge. That's the first really thing that they're seeing. So it helps, having great professors that make you write really helps.
For sure. My professors now, even in undergrad, are like, just pushing writing so hard, and they, tear your papers apart really with
Oh yeah.
with the red ink. It looks a little scary whenever you get a paper back and it's all red, but it does help for sure. Like a professor that I had on before, Dr. Ben Gross, he is a hard person to please with writing, but it has made me a better writer. I'll say that. So
I like Dr. Gross. I've got to know him since being here. He's a really good guy. He cares.
Yes.
You can see his passion, and I really appreciate that about him.
Yes. He might be listening. Sometimes he listens. So if you're listening, Dr. Gross, there's your little ego boost for the day. But yeah, so I definitely think it's important, like you said, the writing. So how much do you think getting your master's helped you in transitioning to your other roles, your other jobs?
So it definitely helped. I was interested to kind of, I guess, talk about why I chose to go back and get a master's. I grew up, but from the time I was interested in criminal justice, I thought I wanted to be a U.S. Marshal. Like, that was my dream job. And so once I got on and was working for Cleveland County Sheriff's Office, I was, just thinking about next steps. Really loved working for Cleveland County, but I had aspirations to go on and do something else. And everyone I talked to that was already, working for a federal agency was like, hey, you really should think about getting your master's. Like, really, really, really should think about getting your master's. Most of the people, some of the things I was getting was most of the people that I'm meeting that was in my Federal Law Enforcement Academy class had a master's degree and had 3 to 5 years of law enforcement policing experience, patrol experience. So you should really think about getting your master's. So I was like, okay, well, I called Rick Davis, who was the department head at the time, Dr. Davis, and left him a voicemail and said, hey, I don't know if you remember me, but my name is Kaleb Littlejohn. I'm working for Cleveland County Sheriff's Office right now. I'm interested about getting my master's. Can you give me a call back? That'd be great, because I just do not know what to do. I'd been out of school about 2 years. I had, graduated and then was working about 2 years before I thought about going and getting my master's. And he, a couple weeks later, he called me back. I'll never forget. I was working patrol, and I had a phone call from him, and he was saying that they were starting this new thing called the Center for Best Practices in Law Enforcement, and that they were looking for someone that was already a law enforcement officer to kind of act as liaison between the center and the local law enforcement agencies, to see as for a grad assistant, and asked me if I was interested. And that's kind of how I am where I am today. I owe everything to that one phone call. So I was like, absolutely. Let me talk to my boss and make sure he's okay with it. But absolutely, and luckily, I teach a lot of leadership. A lot of the things that we're set up doing now at the center, the command college and everything else revolves around leadership. And I've been fortunate to work for some great leaders, whether it's here at the university, but also, Dennis Green, who was the sheriff at Cleveland County, was such a great leader and cared so much about us, and allowed me, to take the opportunity, and said, we'll work your schedule around whatever you need to, but you can't pass up that opportunity. So, my story, I guess, long story short, I probably wouldn't have a master's or be here if it wasn't for the center starting. So it definitely helped my kind of getting to this position. But I tell kids all the time, if you're interested, if you're interested in going to a federal agency, you should look at getting your master's.
Yeah, that's a good message for some people to hear. Like, I have a bunch of people that I'm in classes with that are criminal justice majors. And they're like, I always ask them, I'm like, well, what's your plan? They're like, I don't know. So that's probably something good for them to hear, just to have that as a consideration. Mm-hmm. But, so I don't know the answer to this. How long has the center been there?
So we started in 2018, fiscal year 2018. and we are so what? That's 6, 7.
I think 7.
7
I'm very
years?
bad at math, but
Yeah.
I think 7.
I have not had enough coffee to start doing that math.
Yeah, I know, me too.
But it's been good. You know, we're up to we've trained roughly probably close to 6,000 to 7,000 law enforcement officers in that time. Last year was, I guess, really our record year. I think, you know, by looking at the numbers, we trained close to 2,500 police officers in 1 year, which is a chunk. But yeah, so every year we seem to grow. So that's what we want.
It's so cool, everything that y'all do there. Like, on the day that I went over there and went on a tour, there were police officers getting trained. I don't remember what it was for. But it's just, like, so many things that you're teaching that I think is so important. So if you could, like, go in and list a few of the things that y'all, like, a few of the classes or things that you're teaching to these police officers, just so people know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess our 2 big flagship programs are the Alabama Investigator Academy, where we're training newly promoted investigators and how to run basic investigations. So everything from, you know, the things that we cover there. It's a partner with the Center of Applied Forensics, who I know one of those guys is coming on. Yep. I think you said next week.
I think it's next week, yeah.
So I won't steal what they do. I'm going to leave that for Shane. But we partner with them in this, and we run, it covers basic crime scene processing, trace evidence, imprints and impressions, photography, interview and interrogation, death investigation, courtroom testimony, search and seizures, search warrants, all of the legal aspects of it. So it kind of gives them just a base overview of how to run an investigation, what to expect, what to do. The other program, I guess the newest program that we're real proud of, is what we call the Southeastern Leadership Command College. So it is a 9-week program devoted to training current and future law enforcement leaders on basically how to run an agency, or how to help them run an agency. Everything from leadership to physical budgeting, planning, strategic plans. It's a lot to go into. But it's set up to really give them a leg up and try to help them better understand some things to do, or maybe help them think about some different ways on planning and whatnot that they haven't thought about before. And then we run general continuing education classes as well. So that basically how it works, for those of you that don't know, is in the state of Alabama, law enforcement officers have to have 12 hours of CEUs a year, continuing education hours. So we are set up by the state to run those. Everything that we do is free. So it doesn't cost the agencies any money. And so some of those classes that we run more leadership classes, more investigation classes, like statement analysis and things like that, mental health classes, peer support classes, community policing classes, everywhere, building, search warrant, active shooter, you name it, we have probably ran it at least once.
Yeah, I think that's so cool, and it was very interesting to me whenever we went on a tour that the building just keeps going and going and going, and there's so many things. Like y'all had like the apartment building like setup thing, and that was cool. And I think probably the coolest thing that everybody thought was super cool is the simulator that y'all have. That's insane. Yeah,
everybody loves the simulator. It's called the Virtua 300, and so it's really cool. It's 300-degree view law enforcement simulator where we can actually put people in scenarios, and kind of for you and for just the general public, it's a great opportunity to kind of see what a law enforcement officer may have to go with, from everything from answering a domestic violence call to traffic stop to an active shooter situation. So it's great for y'all to kind of get that experience and see what that's like. But training law enforcement wise, it's really the closest thing we can get to putting people in those type of situations without having to have a bunch of role players and a lot of space and things like that. And that's that was really the main thing with me, and the selling point of why I really wanted it was really, I'm lucky to run maybe 8 role playing scenarios because it takes a lot. You've got to work in volunteers, and I'm lucky to run maybe 8 of those a year. With the Virtua now, I mean, that thing's open 200 something days out of the year, so it's just provides additional opportunities for them to get that training.
Yeah, and it looks so crazy. Like, it looks like just the real world, which is insane to me.
Yeah, it's when I first saw it, I was like, well, it's pretty crazy, and then but I was like, I won't get sucked in. Like, I'll remember that it's just a scenario, and then you have sweaty palms by the time you're done because the system does such a good job of pulling you in. It's insane.
Yeah, and I think it's very interesting, like you said. So there, you can have somebody to run it and to kind of escalate or de-escalate the situation too. So I think that is just the technology of it is insane to me because I'm not a technology person. But walking in there, I was like, this is the future. It's just insane.
It's definitely part of the future. The escalation and de-escalation. So basically, I'm on a computer if you're running the scenario, and depending on what you say or don't say, I can raise I can escalate the scenario all the way to the point that you might have to fire a weapon, or I can de-escalate it down to the point that the person just complies. So and that's really why we chose that simulation. There's some other ones, but we use the Virtua as a de-escalation tool more than anything, and to teach de-escalation as well. And so 70% of their scenarios can actually end peacefully. So we really wanted that verbal piece, and that was the main thing. We want them to have to talk, because communication, like writing, is so key to this profession. You have to be able to communicate. So we want to make sure that they are communicating properly as they're going through it.
Yep, I can definitely see that, and like y'all turned it on and it was just crazy. But something that I kind of want to discuss is like, so you said that y'all trained like several thousand police officers. Are those people from this area, or do people travel to come to some of your classes?
So most of them are from this area, but we've had people. So we get people from all over the state. It's not surprising to see someone from around Gulf Shores or Dothan or that area in one of our classes. But then depending on what we're running, so if we partner with RCTA, which is stands for the Regional Counter Drug Training Academy that's based out of Meridian, they're like a federal version of us. They if we partner with them and run a class, we'll have people from all over the country. I mean, we've had people from Missouri. We were the pilot program for FEMA CDP class a couple months ago, and we had some captains from Chicago PD, and I think one captain from Indianapolis Police Department, and so we get them from all over. I think I did the math one time. I think we've had like maybe 7 or 8 states. Wow. So pretty good.
That is pretty good for small town Jacksonville.
That's right.
For sure. So we can kind of go to some of our closing questions, and then we'll circle back to other things. But so what do you think the impact is of the center and of giving these police officers just like specialized training?
I hope the impact, I hope we make a positive impact, and I really believe we do. I wouldn't really have it any other way. I'm so passionate about the law enforcement training and what we do, and I understand the importance of it. So, I think locally, the impact here, Jack State, has been just so good to us and allowing us to really do our jobs and be successful at that. Locally, I think that this part of the state and the counties that surround us are really fortunate in the fact that we have some very highly trained law enforcement officers, because we're here, between the Center of Best Practices and the Center of Applied Forensics. they have the opportunity to go to significantly more classes than probably most other officers in the state. Actually was told that by other officers from, had meetings with other officers around the state, and they want us to come and do trainings there and host trainings at their, they want to host some of our stuff. And so, and they've even said that Northeast Alabama is fortunate to have a place that they can go and get as much training as really they want. So, I think the impact for the local area especially is we're very fortunate, and I know I'm friends with a lot of those guys. We have some very well trained and great law enforcement officers.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And it's kind of interesting too in this area because, so I had a judge on, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and he was talking just about how the crime in this area is waves. Sometimes it's super high and sometimes it's non-existent. So that's really good though that we do have these police officers that are so trained to handle these situations, and being in court and stuff and seeing these police officers and the way they handle things in this area, it's just clean and precise. You can tell that they've been very well educated.
Oh yeah, we try.
Yeah, so I think that's so interesting, and y'all do a lot over there, a lot of things always going on from what I can tell. So, what's kind of your plans for the center in the future?
Oh, right now, my main goal, everything that consumes me work-wise for the most part, is continuing to getting the Southeastern Leadership Command College up, continue getting that program kind of up, and established. We just we're in our first session for the first module, so there's still a lot of work to do there, and to kind of get that program up and running, and kind of, you don't want to say running itself, but when we did the Investigator Academy and we first started it, it took a couple of classes for everyone to kind of get to that program to get up and going, and everyone at my office feeling comfortable and being like, okay, yeah, we know exactly. Instructors knew what to expect, students knew what to expect, and so that's kind of where I am now with the Command College. I've got still got a lot of work to do and getting that program more self-sufficient, but working on that. We want to be the law enforcement training center in Alabama, by far. That's the president's goal here at JSU. That's mine and Mark Hopwood and Shane Golden's goal. Is we want to be known as the place law enforcement officers go in the state to get trained. So that's the goal.
I can definitely see you getting there for sure. Let's hope.
That's right.
But so let's kind of do some backtracking and talk about some of the jobs that you had before that kind of got you there. So you were a deputy sheriff. What was that like?
I was. It's a great job. It was. I started there in 2017, and worked for Cleburne County for a little over 2 years, I guess, before I came here. And it's a great job. I was a patrol deputy. I typically I worked. I think the 2 shifts I worked the 1-to-1 shift, so 1 p.m. to 1 a.m. And then I worked the 7 p.m. to 7 a shift, that's what I did when I was in grad school. So that was I was always tired doing that. 'Cause you're up all night and then grad school in the morning. But it was I like to describe policing in general. You got to wear a lot of hats. 1 minute you have to work a real serious situation, whether it's like an active, what we call a hot domestic violence call, where it is actively going on, or you've got to work a suicide or homicide or whatever, and then the very next call you could get done there and deal with nothing that serious. I'll never forget, I went from one call went from a hot domestic violence call to another call that she was 98-year-old lady called, and I showed up to her house. She's such a sweet lady, and she called because she lived on a gravel road, and someone had slung gravel in her yard because they were driving too fast. And she came out, and she was super serious, and she was telling me about it, and she walked me out to her grass and was showing me the little bit of gravel that was in her grass. And she said, "Do you know, I can't believe these people sling gravel in their yard, or my yard. If they'll sling gravel in my yard, do you know what they'll do next?" And I was like, "No, ma'am, what will they do? They'll kill me." That was her. It's dead serious. But you go from, you've got to be able to flip that switch. You've got to be able to go from, an extremely tense emotional situation and handle that, and then the very next minute go to something that's not, but also, when she's 98, this is serious to her. So I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm going to act like it's, and treat it like it's serious to me as well. So you've got to be able to, I call it wearing different hats, because one minute, you're having to, especially in a rural area, one minute I'm enforcing the law, the next minute I'm helping get a cow out of the road. That was another thing that was pretty common. Someone's cows got out. So, but it's a fun job. It's a great job.
That's so interesting. And yeah, I can definitely see that you'd have to do so many different things. So, so you were also, I'm just stalking you, like I said, stalked you on LinkedIn before. So before that, you were a game officer, right? I
was. I worked for the Department of Conservation.
And where did you work for them? Not here.
Yeah, primarily I was in Choctaw County, Alabama, which is Butler, Alabama, near Meridian, Mississippi. So that's actually where I went through. Before that, I worked for a jail. I worked in corrections. But that's actually who sent me through the police academy. And I worked there for a little over a year. And then I left and went to the sheriff's office. But that was a fun job. It really was. I moved to Choctaw, which was an interesting experience for me. I love that area. Love the people down there. They're very nice, but definitely made me miss home. Like I said, I'm from this area. I'm from the Jacksonville area. I'm from the mountainous area, and then you go down there and it's just flat. And that really threw me off a little bit. But it was a great job. If you love the outdoors, if you're passionate about the outdoors, and it's definitely something to consider. I think it's, I think that's a thing that students forget a lot of times that are interested in criminal justice, is they see it. I'm either going to the FBI or I'm going to be a patrol officer. There's no in between. But there's so many different avenues you can take. If you, especially if someone that enjoys being outside, that likes hunting and fishing, conservation officer is a great job. It's a great job. But yeah, Choctaw was a little different. I never really had to deal with alligators, and then all of a sudden you have to deal with alligators because they're everywhere down there. So. And then before that, I was a corrections deputy at Etowah County Sheriff's Office. That's what I did when I immediately got out of or graduated college. So that's I always use this as a lesson. There's two things. One, working for the jail was probably the best thing that ever happened for me, because it taught me how to communicate. It opened my eyes tremendously to a lot of things. One big one was that, not everybody that's necessarily in jail is a bad person. They just made bad mistakes, and so that was eye-opening to see. And there are some really bad people, do not get me wrong, but there are some people that are actually trying, that have made some bad mistakes, and they're trying to do right and do better. And then the other thing was, it really helped with communication. And then the other thing that I learned, not necessarily working at the jail, but I graduated and then decided, oh, I guess I need to start applying for jobs. If you're interested in law enforcement, it takes a long time for that paperwork to process through. They have to do background checks. There's all kinds of things. Not everybody tests the same time. You got to wait for PT and written tests and all that fun stuff. So I did not realize that. So I tell everybody now, if you're interested in law enforcement, go ahead your senior year of college. Go ahead and start applying. Go ahead and start going through the PT test and the written test and all that fun stuff. Don't wait till you're graduated. But I applied at several places, and then one of the places I applied was Etowah County. I never forget, they called me because I was working at Kona Ice when I graduated. That was my college job at the time, and so I was still working there. And I'll never forget, they called me and was like, "Hey, we don't have anything on the road yet, but we're hiring in the jail if you're interested." And I was like, well, I got to start somewhere, So I started at Etowah County Jail in 2015. So that was a fun experience. I enjoyed the work for the most part, really made me appreciate what corrections officers do. It's a really, really, really hard job. And they don't get enough respect for what they do, and so it's a difficult job for sure.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you say that, and I'm also pretty sure that, which my mom is probably listening and she can correct me, but I'm pretty sure that the Etowah County Jail was on 60 Days In because it was rated as one of the worst and scariest jails in the country.
It was on 60 Days In. I was not working there when it was on 60 Days In, but it was on 60 Days In.
Yeah, no, it's interesting that you say that it taught you all these things because that just sounds terrifying to me. But there are definitely certain people that are meant for certain jobs, so it's very interesting that you say all of that. But I think we're going to take a quick break and play some commercials, and we'll be right back in just a few minutes.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Watch out for people riding bikes. It's not just courteous. Now it's the law. The new 3 Feet for Safety Act requires that drivers give at least 3 feet of space when passing bicyclists. More and more people are commuting and touring Alabama on bicycles. As the number of cyclists on our roads increases, so does the need for safe driving. So slow down and give cyclists 3 feet of room. Follow the rules of the road and watch out for each other. Learn more at drivesafealabama.org. Sponsored by ALDOT, the Alabama Broadcasters Association, and this station.
Driving means
freedom,
exploration,
fun,
pride,
flexibility,
travel,
protection,
friendship,
escape,
independence.
Distracted driving means
danger,
recklessness,
irresponsible,
Chaos,
police,
devastation,
injury,
tears, death.
Safe driving means staying alert and staying alive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
If you're worried your friend may be struggling, remember, you don't have to be there to be there.
You could say, how are you, or get a fake tattoo. You could ask with an app if it works for you. You could chat on the game, kick off your flip-flops. You could ask on your couch while you binge watch.
Whatever gets you talking.
Reach out to a friend about their mental health. Learn how you can help at seizetheawkward.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and the JED Foundation.
Okay, everyone, we are back. So again, thank you all so much for listening. We're just going to keep on chatting and, see what comes up. All types of interesting things to talk about here. So let's talk about the challenges of your job now. What would you say is the biggest challenge that you have?
trying to respond to everyone's emails. I don't know. I guess the biggest challenges on a day-to-day basis is just trying to coordinate everything. We ran 53 classes last year, and I think I've already got 53 scheduled this year. So we're probably going to pass that. If Raina is listening from my office, I'm sorry, but there's probably going to be a couple more that we're going to have to schedule. So trying to balance that on the calendar, and having to look and make sure I'm not overlapping the best I can with some things. I don't want to run a class that's set for investigations the same week I'm also running a class that's really geared towards investigations. So that's a huge challenge, just as a day-to-day thing. And then, just making sure that, what we're covering is, trying to vet new instructors and making sure what they're covering is current and making sure they're on top of it. And, a lot of the times we bring people in from all over the country to teach, which is great because we're able to bring in really world-class experts, but then also it's a little bit more difficult trying to vet them and make sure that they are who they say they are and are actually teaching what they're supposed to be teaching. So we rely on, other great instructors that we've worked with, other, recommendations from some of our local law enforcement officers that maybe have been to classes and seen them and things like that. But I'm always a nervous wreck when we bring in a new instructor. Just because I want to have a certain standard for our training, and I want to make sure that these instructors hit that standard. And really, we've been so fortunate. We really, Center for Best Practice, I don't think we've ever had a bad instructor. I'm probably the worst instructor we have. So I'm very fortunate in that. But that's pretty much it. Coordination, trying to respond to the emails and the text messages and phone calls in a timely manner, and just working through, instructors and looking for new classes, trying to keep my finger on the pulse the best I can, as far as, what needs to be run. We're the idea that the title and the name for the Center for Best Practices, means that we're dynamic. So we're constantly looking for what's the current issues in law enforcement. What's the newest thing? What's the best thing, the best avenues to do things. So, our stuff changes year to year. You hate to say it, but when the Uvalde shooting happened, we ran more school resource active shooter classes that year than we did any other year because the demand was so high for it. So really, that's always an issue trying to see, what do our local officers or local chiefs and sheriffs and general law enforcement leaders, what are they seeing is their greatest need right now and trying to fill that void.
So it's interesting that you say that. What do you think are the biggest issues right now? I think if you ask anybody what the biggest issue right now is, they're going to tell you recruitment and retention is a huge issue in recruitment in general. We having a lot of officers retire, and then trying to fill that void is a problem. I don't know. We talked about it a little bit before we got on air. We have a great criminal justice department and forensics investigation department here. But one of the things that I'm seeing is students that I talk to that are getting close to graduation, and they'll ask me to help them find a job. And I'm like, absolutely, I can help you find a job. And they'll tell me, but I don't want to be a patrol officer. And then I'm like, well, this is going to be really difficult, because that's kind of the vibe I see from a lot of our CJ students and FI students is they don't want to be patrol officers, but that's where everyone starts. That's you don't get hired in to be a homicide detective straight out of graduating with your bachelor's degree. That's something that takes years of time and dedication, and there's
there's a reason for that, and there's steps. There's, as I like to say, there's levels to this game. And so it's a recruitment retention is by far, I think, the biggest issue with everybody right now.
Yeah, and I kind of hate it for my generation, but we've really become the generation that's like, I don't want to wait for anything. I just want what I want, and I want to get it right now. And I wish that more people had kind of the mindset that you did. Like whenever you were offered the job at the jail, you were like, well, I have to start somewhere. Most people, I think, in my generation don't get that, and they're just kind of like, let me just jump here. Mm-hmm. It's like that's not how the real world works.
Well, and you got to think, we all have goals. Working for the jail was not a goal of mine necessarily, but you have to, you've got to, you hate to say it like this, but you've got to enjoy, the journey. And you've got to understand, that, as my mother would say, Rome wasn't built in a day, and so everything takes time. And you need to understand that you learn different things as you go and as you grow. The jail taught me how to communicate. Working on the road taught me really how to, working, taught me to be, to really critically think, and as I grew and as I grew, as you move to these different positions, you're building the skills that you need. If you went straight into, if I was hired as if I had graduated from JSU and was hired as a homicide investigator straight out, I would have failed. That would have been a failure, and it would have been a disservice to me. So, you've got to understand, and you've got to, my recommendation to anyone, whether it's criminal justice or not, maybe you're not starting out where you want to start out. Maybe you have aspirations to be, to be 3 or 4 levels, up to whatever career field that you're starting in. You got to just, realize that, it's like baseball. I love baseball. Most of the time these guys start in AA or single A. They don't go straight to the majors. They get those reps in, those mental reps, or those, just general reps. And as they grow and they get a little bit and get a little bit and get a little bit, and then next thing you know, they're in the major leagues. They've worked themselves in, but they don't just get immediately thrown out into the wolves. It's very rare, So that's the way I've always kind of looked at it.
I think that's a good lesson for anyone. Like you said, no matter who you are, that you're probably going to have to do something that you might not want to do. You might end up having to work at McDonald's just so you can have money to get you through school or something. Like, there's always something like that happens. But I think kind of the importance of what you're saying is, like, keep your eyes on the goal of it at the end. And,
embrace it. Embrace the, and embrace the journey. It makes once you get to where you're trying to go so much more rewarding.
Yeah, for sure. I can agree with that. Just from college, like, I'm in the last 2 weeks of spring semester, and I'm like, I hate this, and when can this be over, please, like right now, please. But I'm just trying to look forwards to summer, like, finally.
Yeah, and
then graduation next year, so it's like I can make it.
You've got it.
But thank you so much, Kaleb. Let's shift to kind of my last question, because you're a very, very busy man, and we've been talking about you do so many things, and you've got places to be. So kind of my last question is, what do you want people to take away from this episode? No matter, you could direct it to criminal justice students, you could direct it to anyone. It doesn't matter to me.
I guess my main thing is, I guess I hope people know that, that we're here, that we if you're in law enforcement or you're interested in law enforcement, you can always reach out to me. I'll help you however I can. If you're a CJ student, you're interested in, or even if you're just interested in criminal justice, you can always reach out to me and I'll help you however I can. And I hope the community in the area knows, that, we're fortunate in this area to have some really great law enforcement officers, and we're doing our very best to, make sure that they receive the training that they need and the training that they deserve. Law enforcement's an incredibly hard job. And so, we want to give them the very best of that we can offer, because that's what they deserve.
I think that is a great point to end on, and thank you so much for coming on. It's very greatly appreciated. And like he said, next week we're having on Shane, who works with him and does the Center for Applied Forensics. So that'll be a very interesting episode to talk to him too as well. But thank you all so much for listening, and until next time, this is Chloe Cooley signing off.